Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our first stakeholder forum on biodiversity. While you are joining, let me introduce myself. My name is Nevena Ratsko, and I work for IDC. IDC is the project coordinator of the Green Deal Data Space project. And of course, on behalf of the full consortium, I'm very happy to see you here in our event. I find it very important also to share with everyone that we are currently in the middle of the duration of our work. It means that we just entered in our phase 2. I'm sure that some of you have been already following the work of the Green Deal Data Space project. However, I find it very important to mention that in our phase 2, we took a little bit different approach, and we would really like to engage directly with our community. That's why today we are meeting here today. And this gives the possibility also to our members to engage directly with different kind of stakeholders. And today we decided to focus on biodiversity. So with no further ado, I can see that we already have a very nice number of participants. I would like to pass the floor to your host, Veronica Borejko from EARSC Association, as she is the community manager of our project. Plus, today you will also have another host from our side, Mark Dietrich from the EGI Foundation. He's our technical coordinator. So with that, I think, Veronica, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Nevena, for opening indeed our first event of our series of stakeholder fora, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. So thank you very much for joining. Before we move to our discussions and all the activities we have today, I would just like to remind you of some housekeeping rules, especially that we're using Zoom today. So of course it depends which tool you're using in your organization. So just a little bit of guidelines for today. We were already muting some of you when you connected. It's not because we don't want you to join the discussion, but it's just to guarantee that we have smooth interactions and we can really hear the speakers. So just in case our host and co-host will be muting you, and so just be aware of that. But of course, we invite you to use your cameras. It's super nice to see you. We're still in the kind of virtual world. We have this opportunity to have online events, but it's always nicer to see you guys and to facilitate our interactions. Of course, this event is being recorded, as we informed you in the registration form. We will be mostly recording, of course, the content and the speakers, as you know, in Zoom. But of course, if you have your camera on or if you're joining the discussion, you will be a part of the recording too. It's a Zoom meeting. It's not a Zoom webinar, so we don't have a Q&A section there. You have the chat, and in the chat, you can add your comments, you can say hello to others. But then on the top of that, we will be using Mentimeter. Mentimeter is another online tool which is facilitating the interactions and sharing your ideas. You can already see the code to join it on the screen, but we'll be also sharing direct link in the chat so that you can just click on it and join Menti. And there you have the feature to ask your questions. So there you have the Q&A section. So feel free to use it in case if you add something in the chat. Of course, we'll try to keep track of it. And the last most important thing for our meeting today, as you know, and as we indicated in the registration form, we will be having breakout rooms during our event to have smaller discussions in smaller groups, focusing on specific aspects of the Green Deal data space. To facilitate moving you to these rooms, which is selected in the registration form, it will be super nice if you can give probably the same name that you use in the registration form. So your first name, last name, and organization. In case if you don't do it and we don't know which room you're going to, that's fine. You will stay in the main section with us, and then we'll allocate you to the room you're mostly interested in. And then how it works, you should then see a pop-up on your screen to join the breakout room, and then just join it. And in case Francis and me will be here in the main section, so we'll be able to support you in case there are any troubles with that. So I hope everything is clear for the moment for all the technicalities. Regarding the agenda, what are we going to do today? As you know, now we are in the welcome and opening section. Then we will move to our great reference use cases presentation. So the 3 use cases we invited today to present their experiences and their stories. Then we will have a very important part of this event and why we gathered today, which is the moderated panel discussion. The panel will be moderated, an event I mentioned before, by Margiete from EGI. And they will be discussing with our invited speakers representing use cases, but also with you guys. We will be using for that Mentimeter, but also we'll be inviting you to take the floor and directly join the discussion. So stay tuned for that. Then we will move to our breakout rooms, where you will be discussing different topics specific for Green Deal data space. And after that, we'll gather again in the main session to summarize our event and the conclusions from your discussions in the breakout room. Again, a reminder about Menti and the rules for the chat and the Mentimeter. So feel free to use it. And I know that our community is already building for more than a year. So I'm sure that some of you are already aware of our project, but I assume we have at least maybe one person who is not aware of GREAT and why are we actually here and what are the events, what are the aims of our discussion. So the origin of all of that, maybe more from the legislative perspective, is European data strategy, which is foreseeing a single market for data. And that will be implemented through common European data spaces, which means that we'll have free flow of data from different sources in European Union. And on the top of that, for us, for GREAT, but also for I think the whole community, another part of the legislation is the European Green Deal, which of course is tackling a lot of domains, a lot of value chains, and GREAT is exactly focusing on that and the combination of the two, because we're developing a data space for Green Deal, focusing on Green Deal. We as GREAT, we are a project which will be finishing next year, and throughout our duration, we are trying to figure out with the interested community what the Green Deal data space should be about, how it should work from the technical aspects, but also how it would support the community. What are the most important elements it should include? Here you can see all the partners from our consortium. I'm sure you're familiar with most of them, and most of them we have on our call today, so we'll be discussing with them. And then all of the GREAT team, we are working on these specific aspects and objectives of our project and of Green Deal data space. So the core of today's discussion, of course, which is the community building, community of practice. So all the stakeholders and everybody who will be a part of the future Green Deal data space. We'll also define high priority data sets, the technical blueprint, so the infrastructure of our data space. And of course, we need to define with your help what are the most appropriate governance and business models for our data space. And collecting all this input, at the end of the project, we will be developing the roadmap to implementation of the Green Deal data space. Of course, Green Deal and data space are huge. Both topics are huge and broad. So that's why in our project we focus to a little bit narrow down this vast topic. We're focusing on three main strategies. The 2030 Biodiversity Strategy, the Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, and Zero Pollution Action. So as you know, today we're starting with biodiversity. This is our first event. We had a webinar, but this is our first stakeholder forum where we're discussing this topic. The next one is going to be dedicated to climate change, and it's already on November 16th. And by the end of this event, we will share with you the registration form for that. And then we'll close the series of the event with zero pollution in December 2023. And of course, we have other plans for the beginning of 2024 to close the discussion with you. But about that, we will share later on during our project. So today, exactly, we wanted to discuss with you all the aspects, all the objectives that I mentioned, focusing on biodiversity. To do so, and that would be also the theme for our next stakeholder forum, we brought on board some experts from the domain representing diverse parts of the value chain, elements of the value chain, to give us a broad overview of what is relevant for biodiversity strategy. And today they will firstly present their reference use cases. So they will present their experiences and what they work with, and then we will be able to discuss with them what the Green Deal data space can do for them and what it can do for you. And what do you think, guys? Before I pass the floor to our speakers, just a short reminder about Menti, and I would like to test with you if indeed if you are already connected and if you can see everything on our Mentimeter. So I hope you can see my screen. I see that, guys, you are connecting, and let's maybe start with some warm-up questions. Of course, we as organizers, we know who's connecting today, but just for the rest of the audience so that we know who's with us today. What organization are you representing today? You can still see the code on the top of my screen. You have the link also in the chat. So I hope it's easy for you guys to connect. There's also a super easy way to use it on your phone if that's faster, or you can just have it in a separate tab on your laptop. Okay, I see our speakers and our team, but not only. Okay, great to have you guys. Incredible. Okay, and I see super uh biodiversity specific, but not only. We have also a lot of research centers and private sector. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. And it's still growing. So here you're also sharing your project. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Keep on adding that, and I'm happy that it works for you to use Mentimeter. Then the other thing I wanted to ask you about to also to facilitate our discussion later on and to bring you on board for the next discussion as the starting point, your organization would be what data infrastructures do you work with? And of course, it's a super broad question because this can be diverse types of the infrastructures. It can be already some data spaces, for this private data spaces which are already existing that you are a part of. Maybe there is something super specific for your community, for your domain. So just let us know because then it's easier for us to invite you to join our discussion and to know what you're representing here today. Okay, I see again a little bit of biodiversity specific. So this is great to have you guys on board. Exactly the discussion for you. But I see also some more generic ones. Please, oh, we have Destination Earth on board. Great to see you guys. Amazing. Thank you very much. And the last question for to just as a warm up to also get to know you better, guys, is what types of data do you usually work with? Of course, we'll be diving deeper into these conversations in the breakout rooms, and our experts from GREAT will be asking you these questions. But just also for them to have the overview of that before we dive into deeper discussions. So please keep on adding them. Remote sensing, spatial data. Okay, there is of course no wrong answer because again, this is a broad question as data type, but just feel free to add whatever comes to your mind and what you're working with. And it will be a great conversation starter for our breakout sessions and for our discussion after the presentation. Thank you very much for starting with that, and I'm happy that you can use Mentimeter easily. Okay, so now with that, you keep on adding that. I can still see that, and with that, I would like to get back to our invited speakers and start with your presentation. So first, I would like to start with our first speaker. Our first speaker you can see on my screen, Dr. Marcel Locke from RIVM, which stands for National Institute for Public Health and the Environment of the Netherlands. I think that the use case that Marcel is going to present to us is super relevant because, as you know, the percentage of population living in the cities, in the urban areas, is growing, and it's foreseen to be even higher than it is today. So that's why the development in the urban domains and the sustainability of the use of natural capital in the urban areas is super relevant, and that's what we will start with our discussion today. So Marcel, I would like to invite you. Welcome. I would like to invite you to take the floor, and if you can share your screen with your presentation if you're ready. Thank you very much. We can see it well, but you're still muted in case.
Thank you, Veronica, for your introduction. So I work for the Dutch National Institute for Public Health and the Environment, and I work there as a researcher for biodiversity and ecosystem services. And the main topic of my research is to research how ecosystem services work in relation to human health specifically and urban areas, as you've mentioned. So what we work with with my team is the natural capital model. And the natural capital model consists out of a few things. These are maps, maps that hold various information about the environment and living. And what I work with most is are a bunch of maps that involve natural capital. And this picture here on the right is in Dutch, but the main themes are ecosystem services that relate to productive services. So what can ecosystem produce that are relevant for us? Of course, food, biomass, energy, water services, genetic resources, but also cultural resources for recreation, symbolic value, also for science, very important, and what we call regulating services. And these involve more topics that are around coastal protection, the possibility to purify air, erosion, pollination, of course, carbon sequestration, cooling in cities. So these are all regulating services that ecosystem can provide. So these are we have a lot of maps. I will show you in a minute. But the other part that we work with is what we call the Green Benefit Planner. And this is a model that I will show a demo of as well. And this model is an aid for spatial planning. So this model helps to, if there's an urban area that is going to be changed, for example, an area is going to be gentrified, and how can we make cities greener? Because one of the guidelines of the World Health Organization is that a city should have at least within a distance of 300 meters of a living area, there should be a green space of about half a hectare size, which roughly translates, I've seen a study that roughly translates into 30% green in a city. So that's quite a lot. So how do you plan this amount of green in a city? Well, the Green Benefit Planner can help with that, and it can also show what services are being provided. So here is an example of the database that we have with the different maps. And these are, this example is species diversity. So this shows the species diversity in the Netherlands in the amount of species that can be found within an area of 10 by 10 meter. And this source here is the National Data Bank Flora and Fauna. This is not, so the data that we use, we don't always own it. There are maps that we make ourselves, but a lot of maps within this database are from other data holders. Here's another example. This is a map that is generated by one of the models that are in the Green Benefit Planner. This is the urban heat island effect. So this map shows that the difference between urban areas and more rural areas, the amount of heat that is because of the build-up areas within a city. And this model can also calculate that if more green is added, what the cooling effect would be within a city. So the Green Benefit Planner is a spatial planning tool, and its goal is to show that green also has benefits and not only costs, because a lot of time municipalities and think that, well, green, it costs a lot of money, you need to maintain it, but this tool is aimed at also showing that it has benefits for the human population in cities. And its users can be spatial planners, policymakers, architects if they design a new urban area, consultancy agencies, and GIS specialists. So this tool is, this particular one that I will show a demo of, is built by Strategis. This is a GIS company. So what we do at the RIVM is we build the model, but then just GIS specialists, they use this model and they build, in this case, a web application from the model. And I will stop sharing this screen and then show another one, just a sec. Can you see the website now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So this is the website that that is built with Strategis. It's called the 3D City Planner. So what we can see here is an urban area, build-up area, and this part in the middle here is a newly designed area. So what's possible that with these tools here down below, you can define a project area, in this case this square, and you can add different types of functions. So for example, a new area of green and a new area of water, which in this case are also built here. And it's also possible to implement different green elements within the area, different types of trees, obviously also grass. And I won't do that now because it takes a few minutes, but if you design an area like this and then click here, calculate the green benefits of the amount of green and water here, then it shows, in this case, the ecosystem services are the retention of fine particulate matter, the amount of premature deaths that can be prevented because the area is greener, and the cooling effect of the amount of green that is placed within these areas. Now, these are all pretty small numbers because this is a very small area, but this tool can really show that if you design a different type of area, not only built up with buildings as it is here, but also with an amount of green within the build-up area, then it can show here the amount of benefits that it can provide. So this tool is continuously in development. So we hope to add more data to it quite soon, but for now, this is what it can do. Yeah, so this will be used for this project is for a municipality in the Netherlands, and for a new build-up area to show to the municipality, well, this is what you can achieve if you add more green into a certain area. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much, Marcel. It's a great start of our discussion today. And actually, you already responded partially to the question we received in Mentimeter regarding that, but that's the discussion. But it's just a reminder then for all of you, you can also add your questions in Mentimeter and then like the ones that you approve of and you wanted to ask. So thank you very much, Marcel, for starting. And now the second use case I would like to invite and take the floor will be presented by Dr. Jasmine Lamper from Austrian Institute of Technology. And then what is super special about this use case, because I think like it's a super exemplary use case when you think of biodiversity, because it's related to forestry and monitoring of forests and the trees, specifically individual trees. So I'm super curious to learn more. And then Jasmine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Veronica, for inviting us as a use case to the GREAT project. So yeah, my name is Jasmine Lampert. I'm a senior data scientist at the AIT, Austrian Institute of Technology, which is the largest applied research institution in Austria. And I'm talking today on behalf of the AI tree project. It's about AI for climate sensitive tree growth modeling and maximum carbon segregation. And yeah, it's really my pleasure to have such a nice consortium we are working with. We have 3 companies as part of the project in different sectors, and we have also 3 research institutions which are working in this project, and most specifically stakeholders that are really dealing with the forest. And let me start first with the problem statement. So forests, I think I don't have to remind anyone, are really important for our climate. They act as a significant carbon sink and they help mitigating climate change. So what we are working on in this project is to understand the growth dynamic of trees. So on the one hand, we have, due to climate change, more climatic extremes, more heat waves, droughts. This causes phenological pattern changes, so the season lengths may vary or differ from what we used to know. And in the end, the tree growth models for each species change or might change. We are not entirely sure in how far this affects right now the growth. And this is, of course, something that is very important for having a biodiversity-friendly reforestation and for tree planning, to see which species is evolving how in a changing climate, and to use this knowledge to decide upon which trees to plant. So in a nutshell, the aim of our project is to model tree growth under a changing climate. And the underlying motivation clearly is that forest acts as carbon sinks, and we would like in the long run also to ensure that biodiversity goals are met. And challenges, we have plenty in our project. The database is currently not reflecting climatic changes. So we are sort of, somehow in the dark as to what's effect take place. And we need new models here that reflect each species. And another big issue is respect to the data modalities itself. We are really looking at very different data. You can see here in the plot on the right-hand side how much the data varies. I mean, it's from the ICP Forest Monitoring Network, and on the one hand, we have dendrometer data that measures the diameter of trees, but we are collecting water from the ground in different depths and things like this. So just from the ground, we have already plenty of data sources. And all this data needs to be processed, cleaned, and yeah, you name it. And well, requirements, the main requirement for us is indeed the dendrometer time series from different species and spanning several years. So, and here you can see in this representation the types of data we are having a look at. Clearly the dendrometer data is the one with the highest frequency. So here we have hourly measurements directly from the tree stem, and the data is now, well, spans a time from over 20 years. And on the other hand, we have currently yearly measurements from terrestrial laser scanning. So these type of equipments here. You really have to go into the forest, put them on a stand and measure your surrounding environment, and then you get point clouds back. This is something that our partner Umweltdata is doing in the project. And the third type of modality, let's say, that we are using in our project is remote sensing data. GeoVille is the partner covering this aspect, and usually we have around 2 to 3 measurements per year from the corresponding area available. So on the technological side, we are dealing with a typical, let's say, data science problem. So we have a spatial analysis, and this is typically compared or enriched with weather and climate data. We work with different quality assurance methods to then also clean the data appropriately. And on top of this, we are using machine learning models. On the one hand, we would like to have explainable AI methods that tell us which actual features are important for a certain decision of a model. We are looking into probabilistic approaches to cover a bit errors and variabilities, and also physics-informed machine learning, or let's say knowledge-driven machine learning is one of our features in the project, that we bring in additional knowledge and not just have machine learning or AI blindly work on tasks. And well, that's, I guess, about it. I hope I could give you a nice impression of the project. Feel free to have a look at our website on LinkedIn and join us. And I hope we have interesting discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Thank you very much for that. And already so many data sources mentioned. So that's a great start for our later discussion. So thank you very much for that. And then we're moving already to our first presentation and our first use case today, represented by Gerrit Hendriksen from Deltares. Deltares is an institute, Dutch institute, focusing on research on water and subsurface. So that's a little bit different things than we discussed today so far. And I think that will be especially interesting because that gives us a little bit of different perspective, because we're looking here in this use case presented by Gerrit on the region and the impact of the sea level rising on the biodiversity in the region. So please, Gerrit, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Zoom quit unexpectedly. You are still there. Do you see my screen at the moment?
And now I can see you. We don't see your screen anymore.
Okay, then I'm going to share screen again.
Yes, please. It was there. Yes, now we can see the screen and you. All good.
Oh, nice. That's good. Because I get some disturbing messages. So like Zoom quit it unexpectedly. Do you want to continue? Do I have a choice?
Yes, please. Let's continue, of course.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction already. So today, so this is the use case about biodiversity in the Wadden Sea. And what the impact is of sea level rise. The big challenge that we have here is like upscaling the trilateral Wadden Sea. So as you know, the Wadden Sea is not only a Dutch thing, but it is also part of the German and Danish North Sea side coast. A little bit of an introduction, the background of this project. What do we already have? So like we already have quite a lot of things, but the upscaling part is the big challenge here. So Deltares, as already mentioned, is an independent institute with a global work field. And we also work a lot for the Dutch government. And other clients are World Bank, ADB, IADB, etc., and sometimes countries. We also liaise quite often with RIVM, so I was really pleased to see the presentation of Marcelle. So in the early days, I've been contributing to that nature climate, so to the Nature Capital Atlas. My name is Gerrit Hendriksen, Spatial Data Specialist, also architect of the Data Huis Wadden, and I have made this presentation together with my colleague who is a researcher in marine ecology. Some of the mantras we have is dare to share, and that is the Open Earth way of working. So share your data, share your knowledge, share your GitHub sites whenever you have made something really nice that can be reused over and over again. So what is the big idea here, the background? Sea level rise will impact morphology and therefore will impact the sediment and the grain size, which will have an impact on benthic organisms, which in turn also infect seagrass or birds directly. So that is what this study is about. How can we? What is going to happen actually with the birds in the Wadden and what are those driving factors? So what we already have is, so we have spatial models with a resolution of 200 meters. We have Dutch data covering the Wadden Sea, so like topographic data, but also knowledge about so databases on grain size, distribution of sediments, etc., in several scales. So I now mentioned 20 meters, but that is actually the bathymetry data. And of course, we have those RCP scenarios, the climate scenarios. Furthermore, we try to store everything via OGC services, via FAIR data, actually via the data Huis Wadden, where so that we have continuous, new data being made available for reuse in either models or reuse in any other kind of way. Then there's also a trilateral program also about FAIR data, which we disseminate via the data Huis Wadden. And then we have the trilateral monitoring and assessment program, which is an UNESCO Wadden Sea Heritage and Wadden Sea Secretariat program on monitoring and assessment of all kinds of phenomena in the Wadden Sea. So now our big challenge. So we have this, we can model more or less like changes in ecotopes with respect to very small sites. So you see only a very small part between Ameland and Schiermonnikoog here. So those are the two Wadden Islands. And what we really like to do is to extend this to the entire Wadden Sea area. So, and who are our stakeholders? Of course, all life in the Wadden Sea. Yeah? So this will benefit give insight at least in what is going to happen, could happen in the Wadden Sea, because yeah, that is an ecosystem with a very interesting cycle, and yeah, we would really like to know what is going to happen there. And of course, then if all life in the Wadden Sea benefits from this, also all people in the Wadden Sea area. Primarily, at this moment, policymakers for the Wadden Sea, which also has a very layered structure. So, like ministry, like overall to the Wadden Sea Authority, provinces and municipalities, and also NGO are involved there. The challenges. Co-creation with stakeholders. It is over boundary, so with multiple boundary. So also over Germany and Denmark. And then, as already raised by the previous speaker, there's always the challenge of harmonization of data, processes, and in this case also biodiversity indicators. And then the trilateral data part. So. With morphological high resolution data being gathered and also being provided in a fair data way, that would benefit this program. And that's it. Thank you very much. And I look forward to a nice meeting.
Thank you very much, Harriet, and thank you very much for the overview and then bringing again new elements and new aspects to our discussion. Especially thank you for identifying all the challenges. It's exactly what we'll be discussing today. So okay, based on that, thank you very much. I could see that we are getting some of the questions in the Q&A, so please keep on using Mentimeter. You have the code on my screen, and you also can see it in the chat. And with that, we will move to our discussion panel. So during the discussion panel, we will be asking the audience some questions in the Mentimeter, so please have it handy. And then Mark will be discussing with our invited speakers who just presented the use cases, and then we will be also inviting some of you to join us and respond to some questions live with us. So with that, I think I will pass on to you, Mark.
Okay, well, I think one of the questions that's in Mentimeter is one that I'm going to specifically ask. I'm going to, open it up to everybody, but I'm going to call on the three use cases to talk a little bit about it. The general question is what are the challenges, and each of you has talked about some of the challenges. What I'd like to drill into are two aspects of this. The difficulties that you each may have had in bringing data together from different sources and what that experience has been. And secondly, how difficult it has been for you to bring together not only the data, but also to make sense of it in the context of kind of a multi-dimensional environment. We're talking about biodiversity, and each of you is examining a piece of this problem in your own way. So what are your ideas about presenting the results of your work in the context of more general biodiversity activities? So before, I invite everybody to speak about their challenges, but I'm going to call on each of the projects to talk first about the data aggregation, data fusion, data integration challenge. And maybe we can start with that while people are filling in the Menti questionnaire. So perhaps I'll start with Marcel, if I may. If you could talk about the pieces of information that you've had to bring together in your project, and what the difficulties have been in doing this, and ideally, maybe you can talk about how a Green Deal data space might make your life easier going forward.
Yes. The atlas, the database with the maps that I've shown, that has been that is a continuing like new data and maps is continuously added to that. So that is a continuous process. And for the model, so the Green Benefit Planner, data aggregation, there is much more a question of what are the most, what are the new scientific developments. For example, if I want to calculate how much particulate matter is being captured by trees, the research on that is ongoing, and there are many studies available. And the problem there is how to decide what's relevant for the Dutch situation, and how to. So what we've done now is we've gathered different studies, and based on the studies that are relevant for Northern Europe, we came up with an average number and put that into the model. But of course, as these studies are like the research into that is still developing. So the challenge there is to keep the models up to date with regards to new scientific insights as far as we as well as we possibly can. And sometimes it means that a model needs to change. We've had that the last year, that we actually changed a few models to fit with new scientific insights. So that's
Marcel, if I could ask a question about this, if you don't mind, I do want to move on to the other use case. But how are the users of your data, the users of your capability, do they ask the question, what is this based on, and how reliable is it, and can I trust your data to make some decisions, etc.? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, so it's we do get that question, and well, the answer is pretty much what I've just mentioned, that we continuously update the scientific knowledge on this based on literature research, and the usability of this model mostly is in the beginning. like the use, if they want to make use of this model, they should do so in the beginning of planning a new urban area. So it's more of an indication rather than a very accurate calculation of what the ultimate result would be. But it's much more an indication of what if I have different scenarios with different amounts of green, different types of green, what would be the best solution.
So you're able to do that kind of sensitivity analysis on behalf of the client or the user.
Yes, yeah, it depends on the scenarios that they have. Yeah.
Right. That's great. Thank you, Marcel. I'd like to move on to our tree-hugging friend, Jasmine. Tell us, maybe you could talk about the same combination of issues, the challenges you've had in bringing data together from different sources, the difficulty you may or may not have had in creating information that's useful to other people. And then what are the, how do those users and clients respond to this data, and what do they do with it? How reliable or how much do they rely on it to make decisions?
First of all, I mean, thanks for this question. I mean, it's like the typical data science issues that you face. Having said this, I would say we are still in the middle of it. We are almost halfway through the project. It's still going for another 1.5 years. And I would say right now, you can sort of trust the underlying data because it's clean and it has been checked by experts. But so far, the product is rather in test mode, let's say. So having said this, I would say we're in the middle of struggling with these problems to bring together all the data modalities. And we noticed, let's say, well, to our surprise, that already with the actual tree data, so the dendrometer, we already have problems. We have 2 ways of measuring them in the project, maybe even a third if you want to count laser scanning as well. So one is that they do manual checks, and one is that they use some stripe and measure the electric current to derive the diameter. And already with this data, there are a lot of missing data. I don't know, there might be inconsistencies among manual and electrically driven data. We have sensor drift. After a while, they don't agree so much with each other. So this first part of the project has been really digging into the data and to see what are the problems, how can we sort of solve it, that the end user has something reliable in the end. The next step for us that we are currently dealing a lot with is the laser scanning data and matching the actual tree locations with the data and the locations in the laser scanning and confirming, is this exactly this species? So the only thing in the end that you can do is that you need to go into the forest and look for yourself, have people seeing, okay, this is this tree and this is really matching. So this is really groundwork, let's say. As to the last modality, remote sensing, this is still a bit of an open question for us. We would like to go more towards judging the tree health with remote sensing data, because at this point we don't have the resolution to really judge or have a look at single trees, which is what the project will do. It's for now having at each and every tree a look and trying to find a model for this, each individual. I think I don't want to go too much into detail. I hope this gave you a bit of an idea at what stage we are and the problems we are facing.
Perfect. Thank you, Yasmin. And Garrett, I think I'll ask you the same set of questions, if I may. I think it's fair to say that a little bit more than the 2 other projects, you have the special problem of data coming from potentially different national organizations, maybe with different scopes or different parameters, et cetera. So perhaps you can talk about that problem. that challenge as well as the other issues we talked about. And then I'm very interested to know what your customers are going to do with this data and how they rely on it and what decisions are they using it for.
Yeah, so with respect to the multinational data gathering, that is well, a specific question. So like the data on grain size measurements, for instance. So we have a European set of parameters derived. So that is in CDataNet, for instance. And what you would like to have is that all those institutes that gather that data, so like NIOS, our Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research, is doing this for the Wadden Sea over the last, well, 25 years, more or less. And I'm very happy to say that last week I got notified by them that they are also extending their research into the German Wadden Sea. So then that it means that you have exactly the same procedures so like measurement procedures with at least comparable results then. That is one of those most important parts here. And otherwise, yeah, you would really love that everybody would go for applying those international standards. That you do not have a Dutch standard for elevation, that you have a Dutch measure for so like NAP, so that's the Dutch sea level rise thing. So you always have those issues, challenges with converting data to a common, well, data space, if you like to hear that. So
and who's using data, and what decisions are people making using this data? Can you talk about this?
So like very often these data are gathered within national programs with their own regulations and their own set of say like protocols. And these protocols do not necessarily match with the protocols of the neighbors. So there is no like international agreement on how to measure things, for instance. And it is not always targeted to always say like, hey, we go also abroad with the analysis of these data, so that we use data from other organizations, for instance.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, Veronica, is to take a look at the Menti and explore some of the challenges and discuss more broadly with our attendees, not only our 3 use cases. And at the end of this discussion, I want to come back to the 3 use cases. So this is advance warning. So get your pencils ready. I'd like you to talk about how your projects and your use case contribute to the achievement of the biodiversity goals that the EU has set. So how can you contribute? What pieces do you touch, and what piece of the puzzle do you have in your hand? So let's discuss that. Thank you very much. So what I was showing us is harmonization. Are these ranked, by the way? What are these in an order?
No, this is like just random order of how they were submitted. And then when you go for them, I could scroll down because we have a few more.
Yeah, maybe you could make your screen a little bit smaller so that it'll display more choices. I don't know. Is that
No,
possible?
unfortunately for Menti, it's like it's a predefined format. Sorry.
So I see harmonization in many places. So
Yeah.
that's and we were just talking about that with Gerrit. FAIR principles is being a challenge. I guess this speaks to interoperability, not so much about findability and accessibility, although those may be an issue. We see missing, insufficient documentation, a lack of metadata, mismatch between the data and the findable description. So again, kind of bad metadata, if you will. Combining different data sets to align across space, time, and sort of stitching it together, making this quilt of data to cover time and space. Where is the data? So if we could scroll down, please. Thank you. It takes a long time to assess. It is not usable. Yeah. Actual data accessing computing facilities. Okay. And time specs. I'd like to just explore that one item. It's only one person made the comment. Yes, I know FAIR is not just interoperability, but I'm highlighting that. But the one about accessing of computing facilities. And I'm wondering in each of the 3 use cases, whether you have enough, shall we say, technical resources, infrastructure to do the work you need to do, or whether there are some challenges there. I did see something in, I think it was Yasmin's presentation about she, like everybody else in the world, wants some GPUs. So that's one challenge. I don't know if it's a challenge for other folks. That's already identified there by the AI for trees. Marcel, can you speak to that? And Garrett?
Yes. Marcel, we're just up to you first. If you have something to say about it, of course.
No, I was still writing down my answer to the question that Mark had for me. So if you would go first. Then,
Okay, yeah. So like in the presentation, I showed that that there is a couple of segments, so like 34 segments or something like that, where the Wadden-Sea is subdivided into. And we can do like those calculations of the effects of morphology on so like the effects of sea level rise on morphology, so like the difference in grain size distribution, and also the time that birds can feed, so like the time window that birds can feed. So if everything is going up, then there is less time for those birds to feed, to find food, and that is bad for them, of course. So we can only do a very small part of it. So data is not really an issue. Data, that is quite well to be done, but the computing power, that is in this case quite a bottleneck here. So it can take up to a couple of days, 2 weeks to do time series analysis.
So I'll ask you a follow-up question. Do you, and this is something that something I wonder about, in doing this work, do you download or copy all of the data you're working with and make your own copies, or are you able to work with the data where it sits today?
Well, that is the end goal of the work that we do. But what we often see is that the modeling software is not suitable enough to bring the model to the data. That is what that's what you would like to do. And well, we hope that the Green Deal data space can give us a bit more, say, like possibilities to do that.
Okay. So, Marcel, have you put your pencil down and you're able to maybe talk about this a little bit?
Yes, I have. Yeah, so we face similar problems as Garrett. That the model that I just showed in the example of even such a small newly designed urban area, it already takes a few minutes to calculate. So more data and more larger areas, they will take longer. So one of our ambitions is to shorten that time, because that would make it much more interesting for the users. I think a few minutes to wait is okay, but already if we show this website to people, a few minutes generally is considered already a bit too long. So to make these data more easily accepted by users, it would be beneficial to have a bit more computing power. And the other thing is that currently there are 4 different models in the Green Benefit Planner, and these are the models that calculate particulate matter, the urban heat island, and the reduced premature mortality rate because of more green in the area. But these are only a few societal problems out of many problems that you can think of that are within urban areas that are related to the amount of green. So I think we have a lot of data in the Atlas. There are over 130 maps that describe an aspect of ecosystem services or natural capital. So there is a lot of data, but to actually put it into models that make sense for the users, that is still a bit of a challenge.
Right. So let me just turn back briefly to Yasmin to ask about this question of data downloading and you know, storage and so forth. So perhaps she can talk about that. Then I'd like to open it. I'd like to sort of broaden the discussion into some of our participants to explore some of these issues as well. So Yasmin.
So for us, it's also similar from what we've heard so far. So typically, our part in the project is to put machine learning models on top, let's say, and at first help with the pre-processing and cleaning of the data. So we need basically to collect all relevant data to our site. We have there an HPC infrastructure that we can use. And that will be on the long run necessary to have more complex machine learning models. So for now, I think you could basically work once you have all the data on your computer, you can with a notebook, an up-to-date notebook, you could work with it. But on a long run, this will be something that is tricky. Also, when replicating our results to different sites or scaling it up in number of trees, that we would then need some sort of cloud computing space where we sort of have all the data and if possible also some HPC infrastructure involved that we can at the same time have the data there and calculate or compute our stuff. So that's definitely something that is important when scaling up the whole use case.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. So let's have a broader discussion, if we may. I know there are an awful lot of well-informed, smart people in our audience on these topics, and perhaps some of the people who are making comments in the chat would like to ask some questions or make a comment. Comments are welcome. It doesn't necessarily always have to be a question. Or to discuss the specific points that are being made. So if you do have a request or a desire in this area, I encourage you to raise your hand to express your interest on this. While you're thinking about that, I'll turn back to my preloaded question for our three panelists in terms of how your projects connect to the sustainability goals, the biodiversity goals of the European Union. Maybe Marcel, because I know you've prepared your answer and you have it all ready. I look forward to hearing your view on this.
Yes, so the main purpose of the Green Benefit Planner is to show an insight in what the green benefits can be within urban areas. But this is more an ecosystem services related model. But ecosystem services are highly dependent on biodiversity. And if there's good or sufficient biodiversity, that will translate into healthy ecosystems and therefore healthier ecosystem services. So if it's possible to create a higher awareness of the benefits of green, whether it's in urban areas or beyond urban areas, but more higher biodiversity in general, what the benefits can be for the human population, that then would contribute to the biodiversity goals.
Okay, great. Yasmin, do you want to speak to this?
Was the question about towards the sustainability or the biodiversity goals?
Biodiversity goals, yes.
Well, I can briefly touch it at least. So I mean, of course, it's the biodiversity of forests and the health that is foremost aim of our use case. But from what I've seen, I mean, we are really, or the partners are really collecting a lot of data, like chemical analysis of soil and stuff. So I think there are a lot of other biodiversity indicators that are affected or basically monitored without us really being aware. Let's say in the project, where I think that this this type of project, could really help with the biodiversity go towards monitoring at first, of course.
Okay. Thank you. And Garrett, I remembered in Marcel's presentation that there were, she actually showed a biodiversity density map, although we didn't really talk about it in her specific presentation. You also talked about this at some level. Do you provide biodiversity indicators that come out of your calculations, and is this something that people are looking at?
Yeah, so like the first mapper that I showed, that was about the period of time that those mud flats are available for birds to feed on. So and
Right.
if we can say something about the trend in that time of time window where birds can feed on mud flats, that is a very important bioindicator and gives a lot of information on how changes will affect the bird populations. So via all those benthic relationships, of course.
Right.
I was a bit unprepared for the biodiversity goals of the European Union because I did not have them in mind. But the first one I see is the impact of climate change. Well, here you are.
Yeah. But I guess the question that what I'm hearing from all three of you is that your ability to provide some of these, shall we say, calculated numbers or derived information requires you to depend on some models. So somebody's got to do the offer a model that says, with this input, we have these kinds of output. If the feeding period on the mud flats reduces from 8 hours to 6 hours, we will lose 20% of the species of birds that will come to the spot to feed, and we have a 20% reduction in biodiversity. But you're obviously not measuring that directly. You're not out there with your binoculars.
Well, actually, it is. So, like Marcella noted, the NDFF, so the National Data Flora and Fauna. And this project is also a project where SOFON, so that's our National Bird Society of the Netherlands, where they actually calculate with binoculars, look at the amount of birds. And they only do that for the past 50 years or so. So we have a really nice, we can do trend analysis on that. And that's exactly what SOFON does. And if we are able to say, here you have the amount of time due to which decreases due to sea level rise, for instance. Let's say if we can make that relation really visual in any kind of way, then we can also predict what is going to happen in the future. And we need models and, of course, data science for that.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly the point, and I'm now going to be provocative, more provocative. There's a guy, or I assume it's a male in our who's chatting a bit, Jaron Broekhuizen. He's making the provocative statement that we're not directly increasing biodiversity, but just monitoring it. I would be like Oprah Winfrey and say, what you measure improves. But perhaps he would like to speak about this. Jaron, are you prepared to offer some comments verbally or restrict yourself
Sure.
to the chat?
No, sure. I'll be visible as well. I'm also involved in a biodiversity project with, I think, different universities across Europe. What I see is a lot of modeling, a lot of monitoring, a lot of grasping what's actually happening with biodiversity, which is, I think, like as Sebastian said in the chat, is really needed. But at the same time, I see a lack of stakeholder involvement who are hopefully in the end going to actually effectualize, strategies to increase biodiversity instead of, sticking to the reduction, which is going to happen anyway due to climate change. So we know it's going to reduce. We know climate change is happening. We know it's going down. What are we actually going to do about it? And for example, what I really like, Marcella, on the RAVM case, you can plant trees, great, and you can make greenery available. How will that actually increase biodiversity? Which species will then stay to the urban environment? And is that going to be a key performance indicator, or is just the death reduction amount for the municipality the most important? So I think there needs to be a slightly better, if we really want to target biodiversity EU goals, then we need to make them happen. But the stakeholders currently, in my opinion, aren't asking for this yet. And that's something I think we need to change.
Let me come back to you, John. You say which stakeholders are not asking for this?
So if I look at the EU, there's legislation. We all have to improve numbers, etc. But who are then going to improve those numbers? That hasn't been decided yet, and that means it's in limbo.
Okay, so the overall objective is there, then maybe these objectives are pushed down to the national level, and then we're not really sure who's responsible.
Yeah,
I think that's a reasonable statement. It's like, we want to reduce the landfills or waste, etc. Well, what does that mean that I have to do myself? I must recycle more. I must use less plastic packaging. I'm going to pick paper, not plastic. What are my choices on my day-to-day life? Absolutely. Okay. I think I'd like to open it up again. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, I've made a provocative statement about how EU objectives might get translated to national or translated into national responsibilities. And I do know that there are a number of people who are coming from different nationally based organizations. Would any of you like to comment on this kind of this delegation of responsibility and how you feel about this?
So like for the Waddenzee is a Nature 2000 area. It is an area habitat richtlijnen, so like the habitat directive and bird protection directive.
Yeah.
There is a lot of involvement of the Dutch government. So like on several levels. So you have the overall Dutch government, so like the higher government, and then you have the provinces who are involved in there, and also the municipalities, and then all the other NGO organizations. And it is all combined in the authority of the base authority of the Waddenzee. I do not know the English translation for that part. So, and to come back to the discussion, to go back to the notion of Jeroen, there is, so like, if we know these parts of the Waddenzee face real issues with, so like the time window, then the authorities can say, hey, but then we close that that part of the Waddenzee for all kinds of functions that are also there. So I think that is going quite, yeah, well, we can really translate those numbers into say, hey, there is the possibility to overcome that issue by closing down for other functions, for instance.
Right, exactly. Okay. How about any of the folks in some of the other big projects that we know? I know, for example, there are a couple of colleagues from Iliad. Would any of you like to offer some perspectives on some of these challenges? I know that Marcel and Jasmine are landlocked, and therefore your world their world is not available to you. But Iliad, maybe you want to comment on this in terms of the specific Wadensee situation or other similar situations. Hello, Arne.
Yes, hi, how are you? So I think our perspective currently is that we are looking into how to represent and link to biodiversity resources. We are having use cases on fishery stock estimation, on jellyfish. We're trying to see how a data space technically should be built.
Hey.
Did you hear me?
Are you downstairs?
It's all good. Go.
Yeah, okay. Yes, so our current focus is a bit on the technical aspects of the data spaces and the link to biodiversity resources. So we have a new project starting now this month called DTO Bioflow, which is explicitly focusing on how to bring biodiversity data into the digital twin ocean. And we do agree with Gerald's comments that obviously we are looking for effects and impact of activities, but we are probably more in the current monitoring area to get that first, so we can do what if scenarios and analysis following that. And we still have some technical discussions on how the architecture should look like, and this is what we hope maybe to discuss in the next session. So that we get a common architecture, because there are so many opportunities to bring biodiversity in. We have a number of Mission Ocean projects. We also have the Aqua Infra project on freshwater. So there is a lot of situations now where it's important to bring biodiversity into the context of various situations that we want to work with. But I think there are somewhat ad hoc solutions, maybe initially, and we think it's possible to bring the biodiversity resources like GBIF, and in the ocean area we have eBondNet with a biology component, bring that together. So we have pilots that are looking at the impacts, but we also have the technical infrastructure and how that can be developed, where we have in particular focus on semantic interoperability across heterogeneous resources. And that's where we hope also the data space community can provide support. So we have 20 plus use cases where there are interesting things to be done. But we hope that the Green Deal data space will be able to support also some technology alignments and architectures for all the levels of interoperability, both technical, semantic, but also towards organizational legal interoperability across all of these heterogeneous data sources.
That's great. Thank you, Arne. And I totally agree. I'd like to maybe throw it back to our three use cases, ask them if there are some specific things about the Green Deal data space that they think might be able to enable their projects, or might have made their projects easier. So that would be a useful kind of identifier or indication of useful services, useful capabilities. We're getting ready to launch into our breakout sessions. And in those breakout sessions, I think this is perfect. Thank you, Veronica. In those breakout sessions, I think we should explore the different areas where the Green Deal data space can assist in this area. And we do have 3 breakout sessions which Veronica will support. So as a very general question, do you think the Green Deal data space would be of help to your organization? And I see a sad little red thing where it says not sure yet. So yes, it might be helpful. The uncertainty is overwhelming the the optimism. I feel like we're at a horse race and we're losing. All right, while people are still answering this question, I'd be curious to know specifically, again, before we break for our breakouts, what are the specific gaps? I mean, everybody's mentioning an awful lot of things. Do we need to have the same technology? Do we simply need to have a big catalog with lots of data that allows people to pick and choose and perhaps would give you some idea about how the pieces will fit together, what the interoperability is? And I would encourage the people who are chatting to speak up, because it's a little hard to read and follow. If you're chatting, I encourage you to raise your voice and express yourself, and let's have a bit of debate. Joanne, you started this.
Yeah, well, I mean, last week I was with you in a EXA conference, and I attended two presentations about the Green Deal space, one by a guy from the European Commission talking all about open data and how well the data space will contribute to open data. Another one later on the Data Space Support Center, all talking about connectors and how data sharing will be enabling transactions and private data to be transferred in a sovereign way and so on. I believe some people are lost in this, and that's why we don't know if this is going to be useful or not, because we still have to clear our minds on what we are talking about.
Okay.
And that's even more important for biodiversity, if I may, where the initial concept of data space that was more related to this data sharing among companies, because we have to remember that this data space concept comes from the industry, doesn't apply very well, because in biodiversity we have been working on open data for quite a while, and we are used to this way. So going into the opposite direction is like going backwards now. Of course, there are cases where that apply, where there are protected species and so on. I will shut up, but it seems kind of a marginal.
Well, Joanne, here's my challenge to you. Instead of you waiting for us to give you the answer, we want you to help. We want you to help in us constructing the right answer. We've done a lot of work, but many people on this call are super smart, have lots of opinions, and we want to hear from you. So we want to get that input to make sure that what we're proposing actually is going to be immediately recognized by the practitioners to say, yes, that's what I was talking about. There it is. That's what I need. That's what I need. And Kathy Schleit was making that comment as well. What are the underlying deficits what are the deficits in the underlying technology? So let's get specific. What is it that people need and have identified already that they want solved? And harmonization is an easy word to write. It's a very hard word to fix. So what is your magic? I used to have a magic wand. What is your harmonization magic wand? What kind of batteries does it take? How long is it? What does it fit into, etc.? So this is very important. So the comment was made from Johan Wolf, contributed to the 2030 strategy. We need the governance to work. Then we need information all around the DIPSR framework. Okay. And I will say that on the DIPSR framework, we're actually incorporating something along those lines in terms of our taxonomy of objectives. Arnie mentions that digital DTO is working with OGC, how to use semantic technologies for ontologies. So that's great. Somebody put a star, and I second that star. Peter might be able to talk about that. a good described data that is usable. So here I would say these are quality standards. These are some mechanism for identifying or qualifying the data that's being put into a Green Deal data space, so that instead of having to download 2 terabytes of data and try to work with it and then realize it's junk, you actually have some validated objective estimate of the quality of the data, maybe just simple contextual integrity. It matches the metadata. There's a metadata checker or something like that. So I think that's fair. As Peter makes the point, we're not going to be able to have a single semantic set of standards, but I do think we want to have some transparency about standards, and then to bring those pieces together in use cases where there's value, and eventually we'll be able to work towards something more extensible and common. Okay, it's 2:26. Let's go back to that slide on thank you very much. You read my mind. Oh, we won by 1. I think that's probably because all the great people voted. Anyway, I think we have sort of a marginal yes. It might be useful. We have to work very hard. I guess this is, I mean, you guys are the hard audience, and convincing you that the Green Deal data space is going to make a difference to you is absolutely something we need to worry about. And because you've been working on it, as Joanne has mentioned, for 20 years, and other people have mentioned, we know that we can't just sort of waltz in at the last minute and come up with great ideas and solve everybody's problems. It's not as easy as that. It's hard. Okay. All right, I think Hugo, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Hugo de Groof. I used to work until last year for European Commission, DG Environment, and I was involved in the Green Deal data space work tremendously. I worked before on Inspire, Copernicus, and all these issues. Some of the colleagues here online know me. But when we decided to create as one of the data spaces, a data space which was called the Green Deal, we first got a question: do you need a data space for environment? And we said, well, actually, our priority is now the Green Deal. And when we look at all the different driving forces on biodiversity, on the environment as such, if we look at this initiative to have data spaces on mobility, on health, on agriculture, manufacturing, industry, and so on, it's quite obvious that we do not want those to be created in silos. Because if we are dealing with biodiversity, the amount of pressures that we have come from a wide variety of sources, and as we have seen in all the modeling work that is done by Marcel and others, it's quite obvious that you need to have access to this pressure information in order to afterwards address or simulate impacts, and eventually put it in some kind of a digital twin that allows you to draw up scenarios and to see how effective our policies are. And if you have now two that consider the Green Deal data space tremendously valuable, I must say I'm one of them. But of course, I'm not formally part of it anymore, but the importance for the entire set of policies which are now being revamped and developed as a consequence on the Green Deal in the area of environment, such as emissions, air quality. Some of you may have been following those. It's quite obvious that they are aiming at reducing the pressures on biodiversity. So just sampling and measuring biodiversity is absolutely necessary. But my question is also, do we have sufficient access of reliable data that comes from the domains of the pressures? How difficult is it to bring this together into this DIPSIR kind of modeling? And what are the actions that are currently being undertaken to ensure that the discussions in the other data spaces clearly take into account the necessities, the requirements of the Green Deal data space, so that through the Green Deal data space combined with the others, we have the necessary data available?
So before I hand it back to Veronica, who's going to introduce our breakouts, I'm going to challenge you, Hugo, and thank you for your comments. From your perspective with that, shall we say, early adopter or initial insight about the opportunity for the Green Deal data space, with the perspective of the last couple of years, what would you think is the most important thing for us to focus on today?
I think today you need indeed to identify what are the gaps in availability for a number of the most important issues that we are dealing with around the biodiversity decline. And a number of comments already hinted to things like harmonization, access, findability, and so on. They are still there. They still should be resolved. They should be, let's say that these obstacles should be removed. So if you're going to focus, we see that we have a breakout session on the data itself, on the architecture. So that's a very sensitive approach to address these different issues. But definitely the question on what are we currently missing in terms of data to assess the pressures and the impact on biodiversity to improve the situation through policies or implementations, action on the ground, that's very important. I think it was already mentioned before, like on the urban planner. How exactly do you assess the effect of the investments which are being made to improve the green situation in the urban area? You need to be able to sell it afterwards to those that are financing the decisions. So that's a little bit my take of it. Let's try to look at whatever is missing, either from governance issues, from data issues, from access and transfer of data issues, and said these things need to be resolved, and who are the holders of the data that we need, especially in the pressure domain.
That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your responding well to my provocative question. So on that note, Veronica, if you could introduce the process for splitting into breakout groups, and we're going to try to do some work there. And Kathy, I hope you'll take this opportunity to share your specific inputs and insights that we can act on. So each of you follow your breakout groups and work with our individual work package leaders to fill in some gaps for us. Thank you. So Veronica.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. And indeed, I think that's maybe that we haven't explained well before this discussion was exactly to build up the deeper discussions, the more detailed discussions we have in the breakout room. So thank you everyone who contributed to your comments and joining our discussion directly. So what is happening with the breakout room? So as you know, as you were registering, you chose your preferred, favorite, most interesting breakout room. We will launch the breakout rooms soon via Zoom. What will happen is that you should receive a pop-up which says join your breakout room, and then you just click join. If it doesn't work, stay here with us, and then we will help you. What are the rooms? So we have 3 rooms corresponding to our work packages and to our to relevant aspects of the Green Deal data space. We have the first one dedicated to high priority data sets, so discussing what data are the most relevant for you, and that will be chaired by Hara from EODC, who is with us. We can differentiate our great team with our virtual background. In the second room, Mattia from CNR will discuss with you the technical blueprint, so the infrastructure of the Green Deal data space. And in the last room, Marta will discuss with you data governance and business models. So I think, Francesca, please make the magic happen. So you should now all receive information about your breakout rooms. So don't be afraid, keep on closing. If it doesn't work for you, it means that we haven't assigned you because, for instance, you registered just before the event. So we don't know where to allocate you. So just stay with us. Keep on joining the rooms. And then in case if you're not sent anywhere, we will help you hear from the main session.
So yeah, Vero, I have some people that have been unassigned.
Yes,
I think
I see that.
exactly. So I thought I had put Sebastian in some rooms. Sebastian, let me know if you want to be reassigned or you join your breakout rooms where you've been invited, basically. Otherwise, I have.
That's all right.
That's all right? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Okay, Arne, I don't see him anymore, but I have Jacob, Claudio, Juliana, Martina, Anya, Yvette, and someone else. So
yes, I see that the rest of you that are still with us in the room, some of you were allocated to just follow the invitation and to join the room. I see that your guys disappearing, and then the ones who are with us, I don't know if you're connected on the call or if you're just somewhere away from your laptop. Anya, of course,
Anya, hi.
you're the part of the team.
I cannot see. I choose while registration high priority data sets Hara's room.
Okay, so we put you in data
I have
sets.
now. Thank
Okay,
you.
lovely.
Perfect.
So
Okay, see
Enjoy.
See you. Then we have Yvette.
Can you maybe
Claudio,
assign me to another room?
Where do you want to go, Cor?
Yeah, I subscribe to the data set room, but I actually want to be in the technical blueprint, please.
Moving you to technical blueprint. There you go.
Lovely.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Enjoy.
I have Jakub and Juliana. I don't know if you can hear us.
Or Yvette, if
Or
you can
Yvette.
hear us, guys. Or the hyphen. I'm not sure who
I don't know
hyphen
who's
is.
hyphen.
Okay, I will pause maybe the where do I have it?
The recording.
I'll pause the recording.
Okay.
Okay, we'll come back. I see that you're slowly connecting back to the main session. Okay, some smiley faces, some thinking faces, surprised faces to see what was happening in the breakout rooms. Let's give a moment to everybody to come back from the breakout rooms, and I see that more of you are connected on more smiley faces. I think it was good in breakout rooms. Okay, I'm happy to see. Okay, thank you very much, guys, for the discussion. Like, it will still take a moment for everybody to connect back. But what will happen now? Now, I would like to invite our work leaders, so everybody who was presenting great to you in the breakout rooms, to comment upon like the main conclusions and like maybe the main trends you were discussing in your topics in your breakout rooms. And then, of course, if there is anybody you would like to invite to take the floor and maybe share some of their experiences who was contributing to your discussion in the breakout rooms, of course, we'll be happy to hear more. So maybe I want to start with Hara because she was the first on my list. Do I see you? I do see you, Hara. So I will let myself push you in the spotlight and then tell us what happened in high priority data sets. What are the main conclusions?
That's a very good question. No, it was really interesting. I think we focused mainly on recording. Recording started or started. Okay. I think we focused mainly on data gaps, so problems. What types, categories of data biodiversity scientists are missing, integration of different types of data, so in situ or IoT data with Earth observation data, the connection to health was mentioned, so that not enough data are available that would help us understand the effect of the climate change on health. I'm trying to scroll through my notes. The importance of in situ data was emphasized by multiple people in order to be able to know exactly what's happening in the local area that you're looking at. And that was also identified as a data gap and something that the that the green data space should address. How extensive do you want my report to be? You're muted.
Yes, sorry for that. So whatever you find the most relevant, and I think what was the most maybe repeated by different stakeholders, but I think already we can see some trends and main directions your discussion.
Right. So mainly high resolution data sets in situ data sets are missing, and it would be good that they are part of the Green Deal data space. Also to be able to merge data from, for example, land to coast and sea, and so on. Yeah, let me stop here actually before I start coming up with things that were not said.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we actually had a question to your response, Hara. Were you talking about modeled, projected, or interpolated data, or the raw data? There's a question to you. I think it's a question
when it comes to the Quentin, are you talking about the in situ data, or would you like to unmute?
Well, I can kind of imagine that there are a lot of data available, but some people may only want a projection of what the future might be, for instance, under certain circumstances. I want to use those kind of data.
I think, I see. I think we were rather talking about observations.
Okay, so raw data.
Raw data. I mean, observations can be also.
But I think it's worth thinking about the sort of interpolated and projected data as being data in themselves, because not everybody wants to have to recreate them themselves if they can be shared within the community.
Good point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Quentin, and thank you very much, Hara, and for the summary. And we're happy that we could address one more question even after the discussion. So now I would like to invite Mattia Santoro to summarize the technical blueprint discussion.
Yes, hello, thank you, Veronica. Yeah, we had a very interesting discussion, of course. We mainly focused on how it is, let's say, easier for the users to be able, users and providers to participate. Let me summarize in this way. So the idea not to develop something which puts additional burden in order to participate and take advantage of the Green Deal data space. And then we had also other questions about interactions, for example, with the Copernicus DSAs and this kind of things. Also, we had questions from the colleagues of the Sisters project in Horizon Europe that would like to be able to contribute to our work and have a higher level of interaction, which I think we are having also in our calls. So this is it very, very quickly. I know we are running late. I don't want to consume all the time.
Thank you very much, Mattia, for the summary. Okay, then I would like to move to our third room, moderated by Marta. Marta, if you're here, yes. So please, if you'd like to summarize any, because I think that actually data governance and business models is tricky because it tackles upon all the other aspects of the data space. So I'm curious if you managed to reach any conclusions.
Share the screen, Veronica.
Let me, I think you should be able to do so.
Can you see that?
Yes. Not full screen, but we can see it. Yeah.
So we went on 4 little topics quickly through many questions, which is our favorite as usual. We went into the objectives of the Green Deal data space, and in here fair and quality data was highlighted with the notion that fair is expensive and that it may be difficult to expand on it on the basis that it's expensive. And we've talked about how there's no business models in place because it should be biodiversity is a global community that works on weekends because they all love it, and there should be a public investment in there that they're main to put together in place business models to bring like many different stakeholders. It may be difficult in the sense that it's a very global open source community. So and therefore we identified within says that maybe public funding is the best way forward in there. So going very quickly into the next topic, how do we scale up? Yeah, and in here we've been talking that to put in fair and data quality together is just not enough. It's half of the story. Yeah, we do have to bring usability in terms of tools, in terms of supporting the community itself, in terms of supporting a specific community that may go into a different discipline and they don't have a clue on how to deal with this other the data coming from this or the discipline, or they don't know where to find it. So we're talking here at the top two, ease of use and community building and support in that. Just interoperability, which is always a topic of discussion. Yeah, it was the usual. Yeah, the identification of standards and semantic interoperability as important topics. And just to finalize, how do we measure value from the data space? And in here, the data ecosystem growth, how the whole thing grows together in a way linked to how do we scale up. It's an important thing to measure. So that was it from our side.
Amazing, thank you very much. And I see that the tool was also useful for Menti. Thank you very much for the summary. So now I would like before we close and actually invite you for all the other activities we foresee in the upcoming weeks and months. Maybe I would like to invite our use cases, if you're still with us, guys, to say a few words. What do you think? Because I think this also, when you got to know a little bit Greenfield data space better, and if there's anything that you would like to, what do you think about the discussion today? And from your use case perspective, what do you think would be the most helpful and useful for you in being a part of the Greenfield data space? Oh, Jasmine, I can see you. I'm sorry, because it depends on the Zoom, but I can see you. So I think the technology chose you to share first.
Well, I think the direction is the right one to move. I mean, I really found what the outcome of the Mentimeter from the last through questions kind of helpful. It's really about knowing about the availability of high quality data, and not just knowing there is some weird data set lying somewhere around, but for which location, which resolution, which quality, which point in time, so that we create more than just a collection of data that not anyone is using. And then also it should clearly be a focus to communicate, to have a wide community that is aware of what data is there, and so easy access and usability. I think that's also something that has been mentioned. That's also what I would like to see.
Great, thank you very much. And indeed, these were some of the parameters we mentioned before, and hopefully the Greenfield data space will be able to address that. That's the goal, of course. Then Gareth, would you like to comment from your use case perspective?
Well, at the yeah, so also referring to the last Menti question, so and all the other Mentis, so like there is a lot of demand for fair data and quality controlled fair data. So I'm very happy that although very small, so Data Huiswadden is already complying to that principles, to those principles. And I hope that we can provide useful feedback also in the future for the Green Deal data space, how we can use that in a federated environment.
Sure, the aspect of interoperability, and then of course being connected to all the aspects. And there was, I think, several of you mentioned like how can we contribute. Indeed, thank you very much, Harriet. And Marcel, closing words to you.
Yes, I think it would be very interesting if Gladys mentioned it before, if we can find more data that relate biodiversity data to health data, particularly for ecosystem services. It would be great if these links between data sets can be made very clear and can be found openly available.
Thank you very much, guys. Before I let you all go, we have 1 minute, so just use this opportunity to ask the final question to all of you guys. And I know that you already started answering, so thank you very much for that. And it's really not something that will follow you after regarding that, but it's just a question, like based on what you've learned. I know that we also received some comments that maybe it's not enough to understand what GDDS really is. But just on the overview, based on our discussions, if you think that this is something that your organization might be a part of or would like to be a part of, and this is something that might be useful to you. So just let us know what you think about it. And while you're responding to this question, I would like to use this opportunity and also invite you, first of all, thanks to all of you who contributed to the discussion today. Thank you very much to our speakers and to our co-moderator. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much, everyone, for contributing to the discussion. That's a great start. Of course, it's not the end of our great discussions. And I think that's another thing that is important. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, the next one is going to be dedicated to climate change adaptation. It would be amazing to have you on board too. As we know, a lot of biodiversity topics, especially biodiversity loss, is related to the climate change and therefore to climate change adaptation. So we hope that most of you also have something to say more in that area. So it would be great to have you on board. You can scan the QR code you see on the screen, and also we'll be sharing the link to register in the chat. So we hope to see you there too. And with that, I think I would like to say thank you to all of you. And really, I hope this is just the beginning of our discussion, and that we can remain in touch, as now you are part of our great community of practice. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Vero. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.